how many of you know by heart the verse of the Han that was the little verse we used for call to practice? How many of you know that? Okay, this is what I'd like to do. We'll chant that today, which was from last month, and we'll chant what we have today. And every month we'll go memorize each one. I want you to have it, and then by the end we'll be chanting the whole series. Okay? So let's do the verse of the Han first, okay? Great is the matter of birth and death. All is impermanent, quickly passing. Awake, awake, don't waste this life. Do it again. Do it without the gasho this time. Sit like you're expressing it, like, oh. Like the other translation, which I've mentioned last time, that Norman Fisher did once. Birth and death are serious. Everything changes. Wake up. Don't waste your life. That's the non-poetic version. So sit with that kind of clarity. Great is the matter of birth and death. All is impermanent, quickly passing. Awake, awake. Don't waste this life. Okay, one more time. Now this time you can look at me or you can look at someone else, but imagine that you're telling this to someone and it's personal. It's like you really want them to know this. So you're not just saying it to the heavens, or you're not just repeating something. And if you want to look at someone, do. I mean, you can just look this way if it's easy, but okay, now say it like you're telling it to someone, like you really hope that they get this. Here we go. Great is the matter of birth and death. All is impermanent, quickly passing. Awake, awake, don't waste this life. It's worth a ring of the bell, isn't it? It's interesting, isn't it? First you just try to get it a little bit, and then let it sink in deeper, and then make it personal. Because it is. Like they all are. What?
The necklace is hitting the microphone and making that da-da-da-da.
Oh, we're rat-a-tat-tatting. Take off jewelry. My Buddha, my cross, my peace sign. Pulling it all together. So tonight we're going to focus on the verse of repentance or confession, which I'm entitling Clarifying the Way. And so I'll talk about that a bit. But first I wanted to thank all of you that have written things in response to the call to practice. You heard the call to write, many of you, and you've written things that are very very deep and very personal, some that are light, some that are poetic and expressive, and some that are reflective and bridge also from other wisdom traditions, that you were raised in, and it's nice to see those bridges. So we'll see how they move. So most of us know the repentance because we chant it here in the mornings and during retreats. So let's say this one 3 times, just straight through, like we do in the mornings, to sort of open this one up now. Okay. All my ancient twisted karma, from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. All my ancient twisted karma, from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. All my ancient twisted karma, from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born through body, speech, and mind, I now fully allow. And when I was teaching in the UK in November, the Sangha in Sheffield asked if I would give a talk on one of the mornings when I was sitting with them about this, because they particularly had struggled with all my ancient twisted karma. And there is another translation that I've heard, all my all my twisted karma of old. All my twisted karma of old. So you're going to choose, in some ways, which thing you want to be triggered by.
It's worse, a great vow. All evil karma ever created by me.
Yeah.
From old.
Right. We definitely want to stay from all evil karma because it triggers most people's idea about sin, which is not what this is about. So I want to talk more in a way differently than I've written in the draft that you got about this, and hopefully that will call forward your responses in your writing tonight and in the next few weeks. So in my own experience, in my own practice, these 4 lines in a way are a clarification of a radical willingness to practice. You know, the great is the matter of birth and death. It's like, ooh, everything changes, I better pay attention and not waste my life. And then if I'm going to pay attention, what am I going to pay attention to? Well, everything. But in the beginning, my own life and the way that I come to be in this self that I seem to identify with. And that takes no small willingness, to be able to actually look, to see, to hear, to ask. That's a big task. I think maybe I spoke about Koben Shino Roshi last time, I can't remember, about naturally one sits down for a while, when you begin to realize what's going on. So I believe that this small verse is a call to a radical willingness to turn toward each moment. First it says, okay, I'm gonna pay attention to every moment. And in that moment, to practice seeing clearly what's arising and passing away in each moment. And not only to see it, because if I'm really willing to turn toward instead of away, and I'm willing to see clearly, then the next task is, can I meet fully? Can I stay with? Now in Zazen, we sit and practice, we turn toward each moment. We attempt to see as clearly as we can, and sometimes what we see clearly in the beginning is how unclearly we see, right? That's what you see at the beginning. It's like, oh, I'm crazy. My mind is really odd. So this meeting fully is part of that radical willingness. Am I willing not only to see, but to be intimate with? Which means a continual relinquishment of judgment. Because it does come up, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And that continual turning back toward, seeing clearly, meeting fully, and relinquishing judgment sets the capacity for profound intimacy. And not an intimacy that just means like closeness. The intimacy that allows one to meet experience just as it is fully.
Is there a way to turn off the clicking on that while you type?
Boy, I'll just not do it.
But there is a way.
There is a
Yeah.
way.
Somebody know how to do it on the iPad? To turn off the clicking?
It's in the settings, right?
I think if you just turn down the sound, it'll go away.
You'll turn it on.
I forgot where it is. Here it is. Try now.
Should we test it? Try it. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Bravo. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You turn toward each click. Hear it clearly. Meet it fully. And relinquish judgment. Then we have a little more space for profound intimacy. The reason I know that is because I use my iPad to take notes in conferences a lot, because it's a nice way to do it. So I think that this phrase, when we chant it, it's a little bit of a challenge. And it's a challenge that's an invitation. And it's a challenge that offers us this possibility for a willingness to practice very, very deeply. And it's a kind of a challenge that requires courage. You know, you go to a meditation center, like Appamata or someplace, and you'd like to learn to sit and just kind of mind your own business, you know? Mm-hmm. And then suddenly you're chanting, all my ancient twisted karma. It's like, what's up with that? Suddenly I'm tricked into having to look really, really deeply. It feels a little bit like a trick sometimes to some people. I just want to come and meditate, and now I'm having to like confess who I am. What my teacher Blanche Hartman used to say is, this is the verse in which you're asked to stand up in the middle of your life and say, here I am. To not say, I'm sorry, and to not boast, but to say, this is it, this is me. All my mess, all my beauty, this is me. Because that's what you have to work with. That's the stuff of practice. So let's look at the 4 lines. All my ancient twisted karma, all my tangled karma of old, all my evil
evil karma ever
created by me. Evil karma committed by me. It's like, ooh. Actually, yeah, a Calvinist Zen teacher. I get a sense in my own practice that the first line is the teaching of interdependence. That's actually what it's saying. It's saying, guess what? It's a big tangle. I'm part of this. All of this is a momentary arising. This is a momentary arising in a vast network of causes and conditions. That's another translation of that line. This one is a momentary arising in a vast network of causes and conditions. That one, and that one, and that one, and the whole thing. But in this case, you're taking it on as personal. This is a momentary arising in a vast network of causes and conditions. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It does.
Causes and conditions are unfolding like this right now. And there's a continual unfolding. It doesn't stop. Now your body stops at some point. But what you've set in motion in your life continues. Not because you have some, I'm not talking about some esoteric energy or something, metaphysical. I'm just saying you make an impact on the world. And that impact keeps going through your actions, your deeds, your friends, your loved ones, how you, just your impact on the environment, because you were here. There's a continual unfolding of this momentary arising in a vast network of causes and conditions. And to see this as personal makes it incredibly small. You get that? I mean, it's like suddenly it's like, whoop. It makes it incredibly small on the one hand. I mean, this arising is in response to and a part of a vast network. So it's not like there's this big network in me. This is the vast network of causes and conditions showing up like this. But if I just look at the like this part, it's very, very small. It's another way of saying, if you're taking this on this way, I'm a tiny little limited human being, not Buddha. Not a Buddha, not truth, not life as it is. This is life as it is, which is a continually unfolding in a vast network of causes and conditions. I keep saying it the same way, but looping back and forth. Does this make sense? Okay, you look a little stunned or something. Or you get it? Does it make sense? Okay. And making it personal also is an attempt, I think, by our small sense of self to solidify what's not solid. My karma, my ancient karma, my twisted karma, all my karma. There's lots of ways you can play with it, but it sort of makes it small. And it's the first line is basically an invitation. It's like throwing the doors open. All my ancient twisted karma, I'm part of the whole thing. I am the whole thing. I'm an expression of the whole thing, the forever thing. And I'm willing to note that, which is a huge invitation and an enormous slap to the small self. It's like, I'm not special. I don't stand out. And yet, you're this unique and beautiful expression of this vast network of causes and conditions. So right off the bat, if you think of it from the context that many of us do about, as like all my ancient, evil karma or whatever created by me, that sort of sin-like way that we think about it, it's incredibly dualistic too.
Egoic.
Yeah, it's egoic, and I'm going to have to confess to something because I've created something that then I should feel bad about and should be punished for. You see how it gets going? And you can do that, but it also means that the perspective that you're using is fairly young because it's childlike, trying to please a parent. And there are ways in which you can shape spiritual practices very much like parent and child. It's just that Zen isn't one of them. Because it's not about religion, it's not about right and wrong, it's about the capacity to see our interdependence with all things. And so the first line is an invitation and a challenge. Second line, from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion. I think the second line is a really good definition of dukkha. The first noble truth. Stuff happens. And you don't always like it. Except the stuff you really like, and then you don't want to give it up. So it's one damn thing after another, depending on what's arising. But there's also another invitation. It's beginningless. That word, from beginningless. It didn't start with me. It's beginningless. I didn't set it in motion. And how many of you, even though you don't think about it this way, I'm going to say it like I'm saying many things tonight, in a little bit of an exaggerated way, to kind of make the point, because it kind of messes with your ideas a little bit. How many of you actually think this? This actually starts with me, meaning you have a hidden belief that you're born sort of pure until you mess it up. Right? And this is saying you're not born pure and you don't mess it up. Because both of those create a line that doesn't exist. There's not, I was pure and now I've crossed the line and now gone into the land of the sinful. Like, I'm exaggerating, but you see what I mean? You're born. That's enough. That's Suzuki Roshi's, just to be alive is enough. And you're born as a temporary arising in a vast network of causes and conditions. And so you're a reflection of life as it is. It's just life as it is. That looks like these. These lives is life as it is, showing up like this and this. So once again, it's not personal. It's beginningless. It didn't start with me. It's just reflecting life as it is. So, guilt doesn't make any sense. It's actually irrelevant. It doesn't enter the equation, except that we try to insert it. Because if we can insert guilt, then maybe we can also have redemption, and then we have a practice that'll get us something. Right? See, these are subtle, aren't they? Or maybe not so subtle. Maybe they're really big. Because we live with this kind of idea all the time. And practice is about helping us beginning to see through these particular things. It also means that if you're going to go ahead and talk about positive or negative qualities, our negative qualities get very contracted. Very small, because all we're looking at is greed, hate, and delusion. What about, compassion and creativity? What about connectedness, care? All those qualities that also move. So this is particularly focusing on dukkha. Everything's interdependent, and that interdependence, which we call life as it is, which continually unfolds, is fraught with difficulty. Basically, we're just in the first two noble truths, and impermanence. So we doing okay? Okay. Line 3, born through body, speech, and mind. So all this is a momentary arising in a vast network of causes and conditions. It's not personal. It didn't start with me. It reflects life as it is, and yet it's completely particular. Now here comes the paradox stuff. Born, all of that's universal is born through this body and this speech and this mind. It's particular, which is not the same as personal. It's carried forward in this arising. And what receives and expresses life is subject to continual change. What's receiving all the causes and conditions and responding back to it is subject to continual change. And what is it receiving and responding to? Continual change. Now this may sound a little abstract in some ways, but I'm using these concepts to help hopefully pull the rug out a little bit from under the way that we normally think. And number 4, I now fully avow. That's sort of like the turn at the end of a piece of poetry or something. It's like, oh, what? I now make full confession of. I now admit. I now avow. But there's something about with the word avow that seems a little different than just confess, or admit. In psychology, in psychotherapy, I think the avowing that we do has to do with taking a good look at our lives and seeing our patterns, noticing our behaviors, learning to pay attention to feelings, learning to be awake in relationships, looking at things that recur over and over, seeing how we're maybe not taking good care of ourselves or others, seeing how we might be destructive or healthy. So we analyze this stuff and we work for change. That's part of what goes on in psychotherapy. Now in religion, you're going to ask for forgiveness. You're going to make it dualistic. You're going to ask for something, and hopefully you'll be relieved. But in practice, it's neither of those things. We're not analyzing in an attempt to work for change, and we're not asking for forgiveness. We're admitting life as it is. It's a really odd thing. In a way, what you're doing is admitting that you're Buddha. And most people don't see it that way. They think you're admitting that you're a lowlife, and need to change. I mean, really, that's what you really hold, isn't it? Like, oh, I'm sorry, Instead of saying, I fully avow that I'm actually part of all the arisings of causes and conditions of the entire universe throughout space and time. That's Buddha. That's different. That's a very different way of looking at things.
Yeah, because I was thinking avow meant give it up. The greed, hate, deluge, that's how I was thinking.
That's right. I walked through that cathedral with you this weekend. That Catholic. That's right. Mm-hmm. So because relinquishment, in one way that we normally think of relinquishment, is a self that lets go. And relinquishment and renunciation, Suzuki Roshi said, isn't about letting anything go. It's about realizing everything goes away. You actually don't have to let anything go if you look at it fully. Because as you look at each thing fully and know it for what it is, you begin to see its impermanence and how it's interdependent. And so it isn't something solid that you can let go of. It drops away. But not drops away like falls out of your hand. It drops away like it dissolves. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm. That doesn't really make sense.
They talk about that then a little bit.
That's exactly how I was going to describe it. It's such a subtle difference that you don't avow it to make it go away, but you just see it, and the seeing it makes it kind of disappear.
You begin to see through it. It's not that...
seeing through it, that makes more sense, but...
What goes away then?
What goes away?
If you see through it.
Well, it's solidness.
Right. Right, its solidness goes away. You begin to see, oh, it's not that I don't have this pain, I don't have this worry, I don't have this stress in my relationship. I can feel that.
Yes.
And as I begin to see through it, as I avow it, as I avow that it's an interdependent arising, that it's temporary arising, that it's subject to causes and conditions, and actually see it, not just intellectually talk about it like we are now, it's not conceptual. You see it in practice. Then it begins to be not so solid. So what falls away is the suffering.
I know now what you're talking about.
Tell me.
Oh gosh, I don't know if I can tell you actually, because it has to do with something I've been thinking about and noticing about myself.
Okay.
I'll try to write about it. But
Okay, something you've been noticing about yourself.
A pattern that I hadn't seen before, a negative pattern.
Okay. So a negative pattern that you've seen before, I'm repeating some of this so they'll hear it.
Yeah, that is kind of, has certain consequences, but I saw that, in fact it was just in the past couple of days, I saw that pattern for what it was, just what it was.
You saw the pattern for what it was.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it didn't have the same hold on me, the same
Yes.
feelings weren't all swirling.
It doesn't have the
around
same
me.
hold because it's not as solid.
Yeah, yeah.
The way that Joko used to talk about it is you'd have noticing beliefs that you actually believe.
Yeah.
We have them, and then we actually believe them. Like they get solid, as if they're real. Instead of noticing, oh, there's a belief, there's a construction, there's a phantom and a dream.
But it feels like the realization and the noticing is for me it's very gradual.
Very
Maybe
gradual.
There are certain things that are just stickier than others.
Yes, many things are stickier than others, and often it's quite gradual. And so that's why we sit more than once. We continue to sit over time. And things will arise that we hadn't even noticed before.
Yeah.
Which is like the good news and the bad news.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's more. Things begin to show up. But there's relief in it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So, so it's less like relinquishment and more like acceptance. To avow, you avow life as it is. It's like, oh, it's this. Oh. It's more like profound acceptance than it is like trying to get rid of.
That's how it felt to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The trying to get rid of would be something you would avow. That wouldn't be the solution. That'd be something to avow. Oh, I notice a pattern of trying to get rid of these things that I think are bad, and I actually believe they're bad. And I think that's who I am. I see a head shaking. You know that one. You wrestled with that one this week, didn't you?
That's right.
That's right. And if you move from attempting to purify through renunciation and relinquishment and move towards acceptance, facing, which is that original, this radical willingness I'm talking about, what that leads you to then is gratitude. And now you say this with gratitude. It's like, oh, all my ancient twisted karma. This is a momentary arising in a vast network of causes and conditions, which isn't particularly personal, but it's unfolding constantly. And I can see that, and I don't want to make it small. I want to open up to its largeness. From beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, hey, it's not even about me particularly. At least it didn't start with me. And I see that it's reflecting life as it is. This is life as it's always been. This is life as it is. Now, I do bear it out through my body, speech, and mind. So it is quite particular, and it's my responsibility to pay attention to that. How do I carry it forward in this unique form? And what kind of impact does that have on the rest of the world? That's important to notice. The one who receives and one who expresses this ongoing life as in the midst of the causes and conditions. And I can avow it, which means I can turn towards it and accept it and admit it, and in that acceptance and admission feel great gratitude for a life that I've been given. We're back to just to be alive is enough. Ashley?
I'm having trouble with the difference between them being particular and personal.
Right, there's not a difference. The issue around this is one of paradox. So we have to sit to really plumb this. It's both absolute and it's relative. It's both personal and it's not. This is the form and emptiness flowing into each other. I mean, we could talk about it conceptually, but this, it's not like I could say, oh, it means this. Mm-hmm. So you know that you're not me, right? Yeah, you're Ashley, you're over there, I'm here. Okay. But that which animates and enlivens, that which brought you and me into existence and to which we'll return is the same. That this vast network of causes and conditions is one unhindered, unbroken activity that shows up in these very particular ways.
How else could it show up?
How else could it? That's right. How else could it show up?
That's it, because I was thinking of your question. The
How else could it show up?
Particular personal. If it's greed, a person acts greedy. There's there are greedy actions.
It shows up as particular.
Right.
Right.
But it's not emanating from you, so it's not personal. You're not creating it. Maybe that's...
And you have to take full responsibility for it.
Yes.
Actually,
It's personal.
it's personal. That's right. It's particular. Both things are true. That's that's why the very, very famous quote from Suzuki Roshi about you're all perfect just as you are, and you could use a little improvement. He was speaking in that nice little phrase about these two sides. Pardon me. So you see that even though I can talk about these things, you can talk about them, you can write about them, there's a place you get an understanding. And this is the beauty of these small verses, is they're very to the point, and they raise more questions than they answer, because they're taking you into practice deeply. They're not solving something. They're not places you can then rest, get it, and then go on to the next thing. They open something deeper. They open something deeper each time. So the core of the practice then, in clarifying the way, is this avow. Vow. which I often will translate as, I take up the learning path. That's what vow means. I vow to not steal. So I take up the learning path of not stealing. I take up the practice of not stealing. I vow not to lie. I take up the learning path. What is it like to not lie? I learn about this. Vow we often use as an idea like a promise. And once again, it's child to parent. A little kid says, I promise. And promises get broken. And then you feel bad. That's your twisted karma, right? And then it goes around and around. So to continue to remember how essential it is to see the truth of every moment is more about avowing than it is about trying to hit the mark perfectly every time. To continue to remember how essential it is to see the truth of every moment. What's arising now? What's happening now? What's the impact of my behaviors now? What's arising in this moment? And then if you're triggered or stuck, if you're not sure how to answer the question, if you see that you can't quite get past, or you don't, that's when you come to a teacher. That's a teacher function. Also, a good Dharma buddy function. You turn to others. You turn to the teachings. That's why you take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the teacher, the teachings, and community. That gives us a place to bring what we're stuck with. And to to chant this helps a continual process of clarification that never ends. It's not like chanting this, understanding the teachings, you'll finally get clear, and then you can go on to the next thing. It says, oh, my lifelong practice, my life, which is my practice, my life, which is my practice, is a continual opening. And this radical willingness to accept things as they are, and to meet them as they are, and to respond to them appropriately. There's a phrase that I think I used once in Inquiry, which I love. It's from a book by Lorraine Herring, The Writing Warrior. And she's talking about writing as practice, which we're doing. And I really loved this. I'll post it on the class materials. It's just a short thing, but it's a wonderful teaching. I'll read it a couple of times. It's just four lines, basically. She says, first, rely on the spirit and meaning of the teachings, not the words. Second, rely on the teachings, not the personality of the teacher. Third, rely on real wisdom, not superficial interpretation. Fourth, rely on the essence of your pure wisdom mind, not on judgmental perceptions. Okay, once again. First, rely on the spirit and meaning of the teachings, not the words. Second, rely on the teachings, not the personality of the teacher. Third, rely on real wisdom, not superficial interpretation. And fourth, rely on the essence of your pure wisdom mind, of pure wisdom mind, not on judgmental perceptions. It's not a bad set of directions. And so I thought that these actually went quite well together. And I'll post it, and then your job is to respond to any of it that is useful, helpful, clarifying. Because the call, I think, of this this verse of confession is for continual clarification of the kind of questions that each of these lines brings up. So take the questions that are arising now and the confusions or the clarifications and begin to write now. Maybe finish the place what you're writing or sitting. Okay, you can continue to write if you like. But one of the things that I always find interesting and I'm curious about is if as you turned to your writing practice, did things emerge that that weren't revealed until you began to write? So that's one question. I see head shaking. The second question is there any of it you're willing to read out loud? Which is a whole nother question. And hopefully, if you read up a little voice to make sure we can be heard, that'd be great. And Rick, you'd raise your hand quickly. Comment or reading either.
As I started writing, it was kind of scattered around and not really focused, but as I got towards several pages into this, I realized that my concept or my teachings of duality are much deeper and harder to get rid of than I realized.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been saying these words for over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, I'm more confused now after than I was than the first day I walked in here and didn't know squat.
Good. And I don't say that really ironically. It's that the confusion means you haven't taken a solid place and think you're home.
Right.
The question is more open.
But I feel like the question I have after that is, what have I done? What am I doing?
That's the question of practice. That's the fundamental question of practice. What am I doing in this life?
Yeah. And it's zipping right by.
And that's what you're noticing, impermanence. That's also what you notice in practice. And there's no... See, the fundamental dualism I think you're struggling with is you think there's a way to get it right.
Yeah, I think there's a way to talk myself out of this concept of dualism, but I don't think I can do that.
You can't. Good job. You can see through it, like we were talking about a while ago. You can't talk yourself out of it. That's like taking a dualistic thought. I can be in it or out of it, and using that to talk yourself out of it.
Well, that's what's... I feel like I'm just like in a...
Hall of mirrors.
I'm the little hamster.
Yes. Good. Noticing that's really important, so you can stop. That's right. And let your writing keep opening you so that, as we were talking earlier, it begins to fall away. It begins to soften. You begin to see through it. And something else will be revealed, but it won't be because you figured it out. It'll come to you.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I just wrote down the original 4 lines, and then I was kind of just sitting here playing with the words.
Uh-huh.
And they're all sketched all over the place, but right now my favorite is the old, interconnected cause-effects. Before anyone could remember, covet, aversion, and ideas created by human life, I now see through.
It's really useful to play with the words, isn't it? See, what does it really mean to you? And as you hear someone else's words, whether or not agree or disagree is irrelevant, but they're sort of like, oh. I liked that ending about I now see through. That was useful. And the way that you wove some things together. So play with them like that. It's great. Keep it up. As long as it wants to be played with.
I had something interesting happen. So I was really, I really responded to the words just to be alive is enough. I had an immediate just feeling of, yes, that's right, just to be alive is enough. And so I wanted to write about that. And as I began to write about it, I found myself saying, how could that be enough? I have all these other things that I want to do. I can't just stop doing them. And so it's like
You think just to be alive means stopping doing something?
I don't know. I led myself to more. I got to more confusion. I feel like I had a moment of insight, and just I could feel the truth of it. And then as I began to kind of try to write about it, it became this more. I don't know if it was dualistic or what, but
You know, another language that comes up in me as you speak. What I learn in myself as you're saying that is almost any time I have an apprehension that is beyond words, and then I attempt to write it down. It's not that it's not useful. What the writing it down shows me is all the parts in me that are triggered by it, and all the things that are attached to it,
yes.
and all the beliefs I have that are around it. It isn't it. It can't be grasped. But suddenly I realize all the constructs that are like Velcro, like cling to it.
That's a good one. Okay.
And so the writing isn't that, oh, now I lost it. The writing says, oh, that's all the stuff that's usually in the way.
Yes,
That's how I'm
right.
usually caught in the self-centered dream, holding to self-centered thoughts.
Yeah.
So that's quite useful.
Yeah.
You had an ironic look on your face.
It's one of these, do I want to share this or not?
Oh, okay. Yeah. No pressure about that. I could just tell you were debating. That's all.
Yeah.
Just wanted to honor that. That's enough.
Okay, so I'll just go there.
Okay.
So that word special really got me.
Special.
Yeah. Well, and I started to see how young that part was,
Yeah.
and how it wasn't so much the specialness. It started with the specialness, the good stuff that we all want to receive, and
Like the loveliness specialness.
yeah. But then with the writing, it turned more to. But then I'd have to also give up the specialness of the things that the failures and the things I want to cling to that I feel are also mine that are not so
Mm-hmm.
not so pretty.
You have to give up every single idea about yourself.
But also just really seeing how young that is,
Yeah.
and how this is really calling something much more grown up.
Exactly. That's a beautiful way to say it. So you can really feel that the primary call of practice is towards a maturing, flowering.
Yeah.
And then as that moves, you see everything that isn't like that. So everything else shows up around it. And to be compassionate and attentive and patient and persistent with all of those small little parts that have pains isn't about getting caught. It's about opening your heart and your mind so that it can be met. Which is the Bodhisattva vow made very personal. Beings are numberless. A vow to free them. Parts are numberless. A vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Things that I actually believe are endless. I vow to see through them all. Dharma gates are boundless. Opportunities for learning, life as it is, the only teacher, continues to unfold. I vow to move through every one of them. And Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. And that's just life as it is. Just.
I wrote about the very practical aspects of relinquishment in that on Saturday at work we have a big gala, big fundraiser, and two of my 3 staff are naturally control freaks, and I inherited them, and they're control freaks in slightly different ways. And when I started writing, I thought, well, what am I going to do with these 2 people? They're really triggered and hot right now. And so first I thought, well, maybe they'll quit. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll get a different job. And then I thought, okay, well, those are okay, but what else? What else? You know, what is the practice with this being, you know, a boss? And I came to the place of delving into some understanding, based on what I know, what they've told me, about why each of them is the way they are. And also thinking about, because they're different control freaks, what...
Different variants.
Yeah. One of them is like, oh no, I already did that last week. And the other one is, oh no, I can't do that. Never. And both of them are really troublesome at different points. But, and so I thought about, okay, what would make this person feel more safe? And then I made a list. And I realized that they are very constricted people in different ways. And I was constricting in response to their constrictiveness.
Yep.
And I was ready to constrict so far as to just walk out the door or like say adios to them.
Parts trigger parts.
And I was like, all right, well I'm not changing them, but I can respond to how I perceive they feel unsafe, and that's why they're acting this way.
That's a lovely insight, because you see that sense of not being safe, the source of a lot of it.
And I can't do everything to make them feel safe.
That's
but
right.
I can do a couple of things, and some of them are really simple, but they're things that would never have occurred to me. Like coming in each morning and saying, hey, how are you doing? And doing it in a different style for each of them, because they're really different.
But making contact.
Yeah.
Making contact.
And instead, because their attitudes have been kind of,
Mm-hmm.
I've just been like staying away from them. Just
And the further you move away, the more unsafe they feel.
Yeah.
So the more the behaviors come out. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is
A lot of people
practical.
are getting special coffee and tea tomorrow morning.
Good.
Don't tell them.
It'll be on the web. Anything else curious? You're doing a good job of teaching. Yes, Betty.
I seem to get, I got into that idea of judgmental perception,
Mm-hmm.
and that seemed to, for me, to be the spot where I get blocked from being aware of, because I've already got ideas.
Of course.
I've already got lots of ideas about, everything, why things are the way they are, and how I've been in the past in certain situations. And then as I was writing, I got more into thinking about more childlike ways of being, of turning away, of maybe it was linked, my judgmentalism was linked to wanting to be, being afraid of being wrong, and then deciding, okay, this has got to be right, so I'm going to stick with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be safe, and I can just sort of kind of block out everybody else. And I don't know if I was just kind of psychologizing myself, or trying to find something that was meaningful.
Well, it sounds like you began to notice something about if you can find a little safe corner
Right.
to hide in, you'd be fine.
Right, I did that a lot. I think I still
That's
do.
right. Yeah, and we all have those. Sometimes it looks like hiding away. Sometimes it looks like bullying.
Yeah.
Sometimes it looks like, turning our head away. Sometimes it looks like forging through. But none of those are about meeting each moment. So we have an infinite number of ways not to actually meet the moment, but to do something else instead, because meeting the moment is not safe. And then, of course, growing up, this is the psychological part, there are ways in which we learned it wasn't safe to meet the moment.
Yeah.
And so we develop a certain strategy, and we're shaped in certain ways based on that. And then we play it out as if it's actually the truth about the world. That's sort of the psychological strand. And so some of that's useful to work with. But also as we sit, we have the capacity to open to a consciousness that witnesses all of that and isn't caught in it, and yet can work with it. So it's both particular and general, both open and very specific. So I think we're going to have to wrap up because we're almost at the end of our time. And maybe that's enough.
I
So,
have a question about writing process. And
writing what?
writing process, the process. So when I started writing, I started trying to write down what I had been thinking about while you were talking. So kind of just reminding myself. Is it a better idea? Well, is that the way to approach it, or is it better if we pose a question for ourselves and then write to try to answer? Or does it not matter?
I would say do whatever helps you write. If you write in response to a question, then try that. If you write in response to what I'm saying, then write that. And try it all. And see what has life. That's the main thing. Where's the vitality? Just like practice. It's a practice. Where's the life? If it's, I think Todd and Rapesh decided to do this in a tandem, a team. Rapesh wrote something, they decided, let's do it together. It's whatever you want to do.
The writing?
Yeah.
You all did?
Well, write to each other.
Oh, interesting.
So like I was asking you earlier to turn towards someone and make it personal. Yeah. Then it's not like esoteric, you're not writing about, it's like, I'm writing to my friend. It's like writing a letter. Or writing something, this is what's going on with me. And then it's like, yeah, that can make it conversational. That's another way. You can be creative, do whatever would help. But do what will help you write. And write.
Maybe just to write.
And to write in support of giving a voice to all that wants to speak.
That's it right there.
And over time, you'll find voices that aren't even about parts they want to speak. And voices that hold all the other voices that you didn't even know were there. Okay. Do you remember what we started with last time about the dedication?
No.
May our intentions equally permeate every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Okay, follow as best you can. You learn it. May our intentions equally permeate every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. So we're sending out the merit of what we're doing to all beings. So imagine words and letters just flying out of the... Good. Thank you very much.